Hi, and welcome to Akamai TV. I'm Tony Murrant-Patrick, and I'm joined today by Henrik Eriksson and Larry Underhill. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much.
Very nice to be here.
So the World Cup is always one of the most anticipated events on the sporting calendar. But in Russia in 2018, there was more to get excited about than just the action on the field. Would you tell us a little bit about what you found interesting from an OTT perspective?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for Akamai, this was an extremely successful event. The delivery was really approaching that broadcast quality that we're looking for. And we saw some spectacular numbers for the event. And for example, the average encoded bitrate compared to 2014, the average encoded bitrate being the bitrate at which content is being presented to the consumer, went up by 66% over the course of 4 years. Looking even further than that, looking at the total volume of data that we delivered over the course of the 32-day tournament, the total volume of data increased by 172% in total.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yes, amazing numbers. But the most impressive number perhaps is that the peak traffic, i.e. the highest peak we delivered during the event, reached 24 terabits per second on the Akamai platform, and that was a 244% increase compared to 2014. So really remarkable development over the course of 4 years. And maybe then you look at those numbers and those statistics and you think that, well, you know, bandwidth 66%, not much of an increase. But I think it's really important then to remember that underneath that is really two mega trends that we see dominating the industry today. The one of them is that content is moving on to the big screen in the home, using smart TVs, using devices connected to smart TVs. Streamed content is making it onto the big screen. And also, on the other hand, we have mobile driving concurrency, making sure that everybody gets their individual stream consumed to much lesser degree in a setting where you have multiple people watching the same stream. And so even though that number per se is not as mind-blowing as maybe the peak traffic number, it's still underneath there. The average doesn't say everything, as oftentimes with statistics, but really two mega trends driving content consumption underneath that.
That's so interesting. Larry, from your perspective, did you see similar things?
Yeah, we did see similar things. So I would say, the things that I was really excited about is that, the industry talks a lot about OTT. We're going to bring broadcast quality, broadcast scale, to this environment. And this year was a real material shift in that, and we see that it happened. First of all, the content from our partners, our customers, it was the quality of their work themselves, it shone. It was really, really high quality, and you could see that they had the confidence. To the bitrate conversation, we saw publishers producing much higher bit rates, and then as somebody who builds and maintains the platform, I was really, really thrilled with how the internet as an ecosystem is able to scale, and certainly our part in it. So for example, I could point out one customer. They're doing things that are beyond the quality of what's happening today in a linear broadcast of TV. They were publishing UHD streams. They had HDR encoding. It looked fantastic. And then, we have graphics that we pay attention to here on the platform, and you can see that as the traffic ramps in, you start at near zero, one single match, you would go up to 1.7 terabits per second. Just for one customer in one country, and so the platform scales kind of effortlessly, and then I can observe that as a technologist. I pay attention to those TCP retransmits, which are telling us that you might be getting congested, or you are getting congested, and to what degree. And then I can pay attention to throughput. So if I'm looking at my graphs, what I really want to pay attention to is that as the traffic ramps in, I see a very large increase, and then just steady as she goes down below. And then whenever I see that, which I did every morning, as I paid attention to all of our important customers or broadcasters, I was confident in the quality that was being delivered in the ecosystem, and it was really it was a real joy this year.
Wow. So, hearing what Henrik said about this huge uplift in the volume of traffic we saw, so 171% increase. I mean, surely that doesn't happen overnight. We're not suddenly able to do that. So what sort of preparation goes into making sure that these broadcasters are able to deliver that sort of volume of traffic?
Sure. So maybe we'll switch off here. So the preparation begins, and we'll touch on that coming up here. It's really about an 18-month window. It takes
18 months.
Yeah, because one important thing to keep in mind is that we are all members of an ecosystem, and not only is it the content providers preparing for delivery, but and the delivery networks, but also the access networks, the ISPs as well. But from a customer perspective, I'll turn over to Henrik.
Yeah, so from the customer perspective, typically with these large events, we start about 6 to 12 months out, and that's really. At that time, we're really surfing on the wave of what Larry and his team has done over a much larger time scale. We work with customers to make sure that they are well prepared, that they know what to do, that they have backup workflows in place, that we have tuned the platform to the absolute utmost it can be for that particular event then and there. So that's really important. And for this tournament, 2018, we did it for over 50 broadcasters streaming into over 100 countries. So it's really a global effort that involves a large number of teams within the Akamai organization around the globe, actually.
So what sort of challenges do the broadcasters face as they go into this sort of event?
Well, actually, it's about fundamentals. It's about making plans. It's about preparation. It's about starting in time. There are, of course, large challenges. There are, of course, challenges with delivering an event of this magnitude, but it really comes down to the fundamentals. And as long as you do your preparations well and you have your backup plans in order so you know what to do during the event if it goes sour, then you're really in a very, very, very good position. There's no magic tricks to it. There's no secret knowledge that we have that we bring to the table. It's just you need to prepare. And of course, the experience helps a lot too, and that we have a lot of within our organization.
And any challenges that you see from your perspective?
Yeah, so a lot of it just winds up being timelines. I mean, one of the things that I would say in talking to folks is that again, that ecosystem point that I hit, a lot of us come from software backgrounds, and whenever we think about broadcasting online, there are a lot of things that have to happen to make sure that literally the environment is ready. It is physical fiber, it is server supply lines. So you have to know how many servers to deliver a certain amount of traffic. Those servers themselves tend to be built in a just-in-time supply chain. The servers arrive, you have switches, you have routers. You have to collaborate inside of the ecosystem to know that if I have traffic that's going to be brought from a content owner, and then I'm going to deliver that traffic into an access network where a subscriber can view that, where should we exchange that traffic? And not only do our customers have their own budgetary constraints, Akamai, we're a profitable business, thank goodness. We have our own budgetary constraints, and as do our customers. And there's a degree of coordination that has to happen so that we can kind of harmonize those budgets. As an example, we have an 18-month window typically that we're doing preparation to deliver to an event. Now, with the World Cup, there's even a simple question of who has qualified for the games. My Italian friends this year were very sad. Espresso was everywhere, lots of crying. It was a little emotional. Sorry, everybody. But how do you make the bet about where do you build that? So, it starts off with some relatively, let's say, spirited debate about who we think might qualify. We all have our office pools, maybe with brackets, and then we'll start there, and then we start the conversations about what do we think the landscape might look like in terms of what teams are going to qualify. Therefore, where might you want to build? We're starting all the way out because ultimately I need to talk to an important partner like British Telecom, right? Like Vodafone, Telefonica, etc. And we need to start having discussions about where we might start to dimension the builds in the ecosystem because they too are going to make their own material investments in their own infrastructure, and they have their own budgetary time frame in which they need to meet that. So as you start to move out these 18 months out, closer towards the game, it starts from being very soft to conversations in the ecosystem that start to lock in about what a budget might look like. And then you get to the point where you need to order the servers, the router switches, you need to have the fiber, you need to have the interconnectivity, you need to have the co-location, and all that's going to keep on moving left to right to the time frame at which the matches are ready to begin. We try to give as much slack as possible to let those last minute conversations come in, but a lot of the internet infrastructure is actually built around these, even number years, we call them, in my department. So I think this is a really important point about what's happening behind the scenes for our customers.
It sounds very different and a totally different challenge to people who are delivering video on demand,
Correct.
for example. How different exactly do you really think that is?
Oh goodness, so I don't have a good answer on the contribution side. Our customers are really the experts, but what I would say is that the things that are different is that you can have materially different experiences. Henrik has a lot of advocacy around experimentation that he can speak to, but the things that are different is that you are delivering off of a non-guaranteed delivery mechanism. Underneath, IP is fundamentally unreliable. And then we have content delivery networks in the ecosystem, and it is our responsibility to make sure that we can deliver that to the customers with as much reliability as possible. And then one way that's different is that things are very adaptive here in this ecosystem. So if you're delivering at a certain quality level, you can't make that delivery at that level, you can drop. And you can write out patches where maybe in a different delivery mechanism you can't.
So the one thing I would say is that, when it comes to a popular TV series or drama or anything like that, it's still there to watch the following day. Mm-hmm. If it's not working this very instant, it's still there tomorrow or later this evening. With live, it's really about the here and now, and I think that broadcasters are already used to this on a grand scale, but it's about preparing also for the OTT delivery to happen, to have backup workflows in place for OTT delivery, to make plans for OTT delivery. And that is something that we really saw for the tournament 2018, that the level of maturity in the industry has definitely come up as it relates to planning also for OTT delivery to be an integral part of delivering large live events.
Wow, it just sounds so interesting. And I guess to deliver 29.3 billion minutes of live television, you talked about all the planning that goes into that, but when it's actually happening on the spot, surely the best laid plans can sometimes go wrong. So what do broadcasters need to think about for responding in real time to the issues that they face?
That's a very good question. I think that the number one thing is getting insight into what's going on, getting metrics, making sure to instrument players, also on connected devices, trying to understand the distribution workflow to a larger extent, and making sure that that data comes as close to real time as you can possibly make it, so that you can make informed decisions. We all know that a football game lasts some 120 minutes, depending on whether there's an extension or not, but that's not a lot of time to react. Make sure that you prepared to take decisions that might be painful or that might cause a bit of disruption in order to save the whole broadcast as such. And making sure that you have the intel to inform those decisions, that's really important. And also we would definitely be missing out if we didn't recommend customers to team up to make sure that they have the support from all the technology vendors on the day, to make sure that all the vendors are there to support them during the event. Definitely.
Sure, and I can't re-emphasize the point enough. Henrik points out monitoring is the first thing. The more monitoring that you can put in place of every segment of the chain. If you have really high quality monitoring, good fidelity, you can get that data in as near real time as possible and then aggregate it so that you can have a meaningful view. This is a technique that we use on our own platform, and it's a universal technique. So making sure that you have every component properly instrumented, and then surface those metrics, and then that allows you to see where problems are popping up, and then it allows you to understand what the magnitude of the problem is, and then allow you to have a better reaction time, so you've detected it quickly, you've recovered quickly, and you haven't overreacted. And even simple things like, make sure that you know the capabilities of all your vendors in the chains about what they can surface. And so, not to make it a product placement, but our Akamai accelerated ingest, it has an advantage in that it gives us a reliable delivery from the encoder into the CDN, but there's this really wonderful side benefit that it has metrics about what the encoder is doing, and then it's being brought into our CDN. And so from the customer's view of those metrics and the CDN provider's view of the metrics, it allows us to both be reliable in the face of uncertainty or things where that might go wrong. So metrics are just huge.
And that actually speaks to another really important point, and that is to secure the entire workflow. A lot of times you just look at certain parts where you might have problems, but you really need to look at it end to end, because on the day it all has to work end to end. And that is both from the sort of streaming perspective, making sure to get a TV signal or an OTT signal or an OTT stream out there, but it's definitely also from the entire ecosystem around the stream. Do you have is the stream behind a login? Do you need additional security for your website? Is the website scaled to handle the onslaught? Because a lot of times we see these adjacent components that are needed for a successful delivery of the event be the points of failure as you move into the event. A lot of times the Akamai platform will scale just fine, but then some ancillary system fails, and then the whole, and then you end up in a lot of trouble, rather than making sure that you have tested all that up front and made sure that it's all built to handle the amount of audience that you're expecting.
So plan again, and maybe plan some more. Yes. And then once you're done planning, make sure you're monitoring how you're doing against that plan.
And have a backup. Have an alternate plan. If this doesn't work, what do I do? Because especially when it comes to football, there's a lot of you can degrade experiences, you can do shortcuts, you can sort of you can turn away from the optimum experience that you intended to offer and still offer something that consumers will want to take part in, even though it's not exactly what you intended to offer. So that's also important.
And then along those lines, if you hit a blip where you need to degrade an experience, let's say you offer somebody 2 rungs on your ladder lower from the bit rate, you might be able to survive through that for the next 10-15 minutes, and then to return whatever system was malfunctioning to normal, and then you can offer the full experience again. So if you have the monitoring in place, you have a plan. Some of this, again, good fundamentals. Everybody that's on an ops team should know what their run book is for a given event. We do these as well. So cheers for the fundamentals.
So we've heard a lot about Russia 2018, Qatar 22 already on the horizon. So what can we expect that's going to be new and different in the next World Cup?
I think it's going to be kind of like a hipster thing, like lower bit rates. Yeah, that would be back in vogue. I think. No. So much higher bit rates. I mean, I think that's the answer. As Henrik was talking about connected devices, we see a lot in the industry now. It's a little surprising about the experiences that people are viewing on their very large screens, with some type of connected device like an Apple TV or Chromecast, etc. So that's certainly going to be in play, and even more. And then the concurrency that's happening around mobile will certainly be much higher. So I expect basically our platform to be operating at double the scale that we operate at. Well, that's what we've been doing historically. So I don't think I'm going out on a limb there. So we're certainly expecting that, and then. And then, there's an issue around timing, I think, which might be, useful to dig into a little bit on. It's happening in Q4 this time instead of Q2, and that's important.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the thing is that the internet grows in cycles and has been doing so ever since its inception. And growth typically happens in Q3 and Q4. And during the summer, there's a bit of a slower period where we also sometimes see traffic decreasing. And we have this graph. We're using an internet exchange to model the internet, though I've learned from Larry just this week that those are no longer good models for the internet because so much of the traffic is being exchanged privately on the internet exchanges. It still highlights the point that typically infrastructure investments tend to come into fruition in Q3 and Q4, not only for Akamai, but for the entire ecosystem of operators and downstream network providers. And what's going to happen in 2022 is that Qatar is extremely warm in the summer when the World Cup is typically played. So FIFA has made the decision to move it to the November-December time frame, putting it in the middle of what is usually the peak of the internet for that year. So we're going to have this peak-on-peak effect for 2022 that we haven't seen before, and that is going to take a lot of careful planning from network providers around the globe to figure out how to deal with that timing of such a large event.
Yeah, believe it or not, what we're saying is that it's been easy, everybody. We've gotten a little bit of a discount because in the summertime, people go on vacation. As an American here in Europe, I've learned about this. People go on vacation during the summer, and that drives a lull in the traffic, which kind of unfairly gives you some additional headroom. So then you can build to the peaks on top. And this upcoming Qatar event is that advantage goes away. And so that should change some of the pacing and some of the interactions that we have between content delivery networks and our customers and ISPs coming soon.
Yeah. So it sounds like a host of new challenges.
Definitely. But at the same time, we're here in a largely technological capacity, right? We're techies. But I also think it's very important to think about, for broadcasters, to think about how they can work with the event and the content itself. I mean, we saw a lot of experimenting this year with virtual realities or 360 streaming. We saw experiments with offering other camera angles to the end users and so on. And that I think will also continue to develop. We're only in the early stages of that, of understanding, okay, we know what the TV broadcast being brought to millions of people look like, and we're well on the way to move that experience over to being delivered via the open internet. But alongside with that also comes new types of content, second screen experiences and so on. And that's also something for broadcasters to think about, I think, for Qatar 2022, to really start thinking about what can we do with this? What are the opportunities? How can we challenge ourselves to reinvent the sports drama and present it in new ways to delight our audience even more.
Wow. So you guys worked with some 55 different broadcasters all around the world to deliver the World Cup in 2018. So I think you've got a lot of experience of this under your belt. With these new challenges coming towards broadcasters in 2022, what sort of tips would you offer them to get themselves prepared?
Well, the first thing that I would say, no surprise, is going to be planning, but maybe let's dive into that and be a little bit more specific. So a specific tip would be to take your planning process and then expand that calendar and engage with your delivery partners early. So that would be the first thing. And then that collaboration, it doesn't have to be perfect. Your numbers don't have to be perfect at first. You just need to get them into the ballpark, because as the time goes on, we'll figure out the right discount to apply or the right bonus to apply. So I would say the following things. If you're a customer, you know your subs, and you know, based upon those subs, you can develop what is your best guess within confidence bands about what the number of concurrent views that you're going to have. So the most important thing that you can do to bring to the table is, once you understand your concurrent views, you need to turn that into a traffic number. And the traffic number is going to be informed by your bitrate ladder, and then your bitrate ladder is going to be influenced by a wide variety of things. Who are you competing against? Do you want to have a better quality product offering than, company A, B, or C? What can you actually deliver? If you engage early with your content provider, certainly Akamai, I trust others have maybe potentially some visibility. I know, for example, to every single ASN, what the throughput characteristics of that are inside of every single geography. So if you come to me and you say that I have a set of peaks that looks like this, I think this is my concurrence, I'm going into the following geographies, I can tell you what the breakdown of those might be. We can create a formula that would give your bitrate ladder about this is what the probable distribution is, and then we can roll that into a top line number that's going to be useful to you to carry on a commercial conversation, and it's going to be useful to us to carry on a planning conversation inside of the ecosystem. We will wash, rinse, repeat with the rest of our customers, and you will have a seat at the table. You won't be coming to us super late asking for bandwidth. You'll be a key partner, and we will be a partner to you.
What are your tips, Henrik?
Well, they won't differ much from Larry's, but for different reasons, I think, maybe, or for the same reasons. It's all about being able to support the event once it's upon you. And to do that, you need to select good partners, partner up with them, work closely with them, and make sure you start on well ahead of time, and that you have a good idea of where you want to drive this event.
So when should they start engaging?
I think the window really, if you use an 18-month window, I think you're having a credible set of conversations.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll look forward to that in 2020 then.
Yes.
Definitely.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. Larry Underhill, Henrik Eriksson, it's been a pleasure having you on Akamai TV.
Thank you.
Please join us at the top of the hour for more from Akamai TV.